Welcome to the bonus show, everybody. It appears it is not only producer Pat not watching the Olympics. Very, very low ratings for the Olympics compared to the 2018 kind of early numbers. It's all kind of weird also because some of the stuff is streaming on Peacock now, which is like the separate network and online streaming. It's still very early in these Olympics, but it's not seeming like there is significant interest here. And on the 2022 opening ceremony, only 8.7 million people watched. And I continue to think, Pat, that there's another story here that's not often mentioned, which is depending on where the Olympics are held, the timing in the United States allows for live, but at a weird time, live, or these kind of repackaged, it's meant to look kind of live, but it's all happened hours ago. And the opening ceremony was carried in one of these packaged, pre-taped things. And I think that even if it looks and feels live, people know that it's not. And I think it just reduces interest. I really do.
Yeah, it could be a number of reasons. We've also seen a waning interest in sports over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, ever since the pandemic started, people have just been not tuning into sports as much. There could be a number of different factors, maybe because sports disappeared for a little bit, and so people got used to not watching them. It could be some of the Black Lives Matter protests affecting things. Maybe that's why people started tuning out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this Olympics compared to previous ones, like I remember the 2008 Olympics, that was also in China. That was huge. I remember everyone was watching that. Michael Phelps was winning all these gold medals, and for whatever reason, people just aren't watching anymore. And this also was true for the Tokyo Olympics last year.
The other thing, I mean, our conversation about this is very U.S. centric. I understand that in other countries it's different because you're in a different time zone, which may be more convenient, or the athletes from your country may be doing well. But the U.S. did not start off well in the early events either. And sometimes what allows interest to build are interesting stories about athletes or teams related to American, athletes. And it's also starting very slow there in terms of medals and events. So it's just all pointing to being kind of very meh.
Yeah, the U.S. tends to do really well when it comes to the Summer Olympics, but not so much the Winter Olympics. We get our wins here and there, but other countries tend to shine when it comes to the Winter Olympics. But I honestly do feel bad in a sense. It's not going to make me actually start to watch the games or anything like that, but I just feel as though these athletes, they work their whole lives to become Olympians. Maybe they're on the bobsledding team or they're on the curling team, whatever the case may be. They don't really have a professional future in the sport outside of the Olympics. Like,
True.
This is probably it for them. And I, in theory, want these sports to continue, right? I want there to be professional athletes who are able to go to the Olympics and be successful in these different fields. I like that exists, but I'm just not caring enough to watch myself for whatever reason.
I know what you mean. I also saw a really disturbing thing. This is like kind of neither here nor there, but I saw an aerial shot of one of I think it was a ski jumping track. I don't know if you saw this picture, Pat, where it's basically like a concrete jungle, urban smog, hellish situation. And you see a little white line and you have to look closely. And the ski jump, it's not like on a mountain, and it's just literally they've built a ski jumping thing with what I assume is fake snow in the middle of nuclear reactors. Like there's literally nuclear, the typical, like from The Simpsons, the two nuclear things. And it's just like, it just seems depressing to see it in this way.
And that's for the event itself. It's not just for practice runs.
I think it's for the event. Yeah, I do. I think from what I read, I think it's for the event. It's weird.
That's crazy. If you had to pick a winter sport that you would become an Olympian in, which would you choose?
Ooh, I don't, so I think I would probably say an individual sport, because it just seems like hockey, it seems like it might be more interesting to be doing, and I'm recognized individually for this in some way. So maybe, I don't know, like the downhill skiing is interesting to me, and it's very high speed and kind of exciting. So that's kind of cool. I don't know.
Right. Hockey's a little bit of a cop-out because then you can also be an NHL player, for example. So it's a little bit of a cheap answer.
Yeah.
Is snowshoeing one of the sports? I think I would be best at that.
I don't know if it is. That's the other thing, by the way. it's not always the same sports. Over time, sports are rotated in and out, and that causes a lot of controversy because sometimes people are like, well, this is just there's no basis for comparison. There's no real what are we comparing to? Is this person really that good? It's just this is the first year they've done this. And I think that bothers some people as well.
Oh, totally, and especially if you commit your life to a certain sport and then for
They
whatever reason
cancel it.
they get rid of it from the Olympics. Like that's not fair, especially when you reach your prime athletically, when you become 18 years old and ready to compete in the Olympics, and all of a sudden they don't have your sport anymore. They
Yeah.
can't do that to you.
So the other aspect of the Olympic situation I want to talk about, and this is really not good. There's a global pandemic still going on. We're hoping soon it will be endemic rather than pandemic, but in practice, it's not really, for the purposes of the Olympics, they're still testing and quarantining. There are hellish stories about the quarantine hotels for athletes claiming that they have not nearly enough food and inedible meals, no ability to train or kind of stay in shape for their sport where they need to quarantine when they arrive. Some of the athletes are testing positive, and then they are ending up in these horrifying quarantine situations. People talking about stomach aches and all sorts of different issues as a result of the food for the quarantining that is taking place. That it's bizarre foods, charred meat on a bone, no vegetables in many cases. And like, it just seems completely hellish in every way. And it again just raises questions of like, did it really make sense to do this, given that this was going to be the situation as far as COVID goes?
Obviously, it's tough to cancel, though, especially when this is years and years in the making and you
Yeah.
don't know what the state of the pandemic is going to be even a year out. I mean, you could assume, okay, it's going to be the winter, so we could have another wave of this thing. It could be severe, but is that enough to cancel it on? Maybe not. And it's interesting how even like a percentage of these athletes are testing positive because we've talked for a long time about China lying about the numbers. Apparently, according to their statistics, only about 40 to 100 people in the entire country of 1+ billion are getting COVID every single day.
Right.
That just doesn't add up, even if
It's
you have a small portion
impossible
of
to. Who could
Olympians.
possibly believe that? They'll say we've had a COVID zero policy, but it's not believable at all.
Yeah, even if 3 of these athletes and coaches are testing positive every single day, and that gets factored into the numbers, statistically, that means that so many more of the population are also getting this thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's so obvious that they're lying about the numbers at this point. But yeah, I mean, that would be awful too. Like we were talking about how it would be terrible if you commit to a sport and then they get rid of it from the Olympics. It would be even worse maybe if like you're at the Olympics, you're ready to go, then you test positive and you can't even compete. I mean, how does
The
it get
the
worse
other
than that?
thing that's being alleged is that the athletes are getting worse food than the non-athletes, which I don't know why it would be, but there was this situation where I believe it was a Belgian athlete said that their food was like just absolutely terrible. And they started to notice that there were different looking boxes left outside of some other rooms, and then was able to talk to like a coach, and the coach was getting fresh fruit and prawns with broccoli and all this. I don't even like, why would the athletes not get the better food? I don't even, it's all
Well,
crazy.
here's a cynical reason
Yeah.
because they don't want these foreign athletes to perform well. Like maybe they're giving
Oh,
the Chinese athletes the best food possible, but they're giving these foreign athletes not so great food. I mean, it just seems so obvious that that would be figured out, though, right?
yeah.
Because these athletes have social media pages. They can easily talk about how bad the food is. It's not like they could keep that a secret.
No, you're right. It's all very bizarre. And I'm guessing that in the next few days, like in the last 48 hours, a lot of this stuff started coming out and going public. I'm guessing in the next 48 hours, we're going to find out a lot more about how some of these things are being handled. But not a great situation for many different people in a number of different ways. In the United States, alcohol is coming back to planes. And understandably, flight attendants are worried that it's going to create an unsafe work environment. Now, I would say an even more unsafe work environment for flight attendants. And as many of you may or may not know, there are airlines that stopped serving alcohol during the pandemic. Different airlines have and are bringing it back at different times. The latest is that Southwest Airlines will start serving alcohol again 8 days from now on February 16th. And airlines are wanting to do this presumably to restore a sense of normalcy, to make their airline more attractive, and to make money, right? At the end of the day, alcohol on flights is very, very profitable. And flight attendants are worried, and I would be too. I mean, when you look at the number of disturbances and unruly passengers, mask refusers, and all these different things, even when drinking their Sprite on every flight I've been on, people are playing fast and loose, holding the glass like this the whole time and keeping their mask down for an hour under the guise that they're actively drinking. What do you think is going to happen when those drinks have alcohol in them? I mean, I sympathize with the flight attendants here.
I think it makes sense to wait. Like, I think it's fine to have alcohol on planes in general, but maybe let's wait until the mask requirements aren't in place anymore.
That's
because
what
that
I was
seems to be
going to
triggering
ask.
people.
Do you think that alcohol should come back only when masks are no longer needed? I don't know. Like, does that make sense? Maybe it does.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I would expect that yes, because I'd imagine that a good portion of these incidents where people get unruly have to do with the fact that they have to wear the mask. And then, if they're wearing it below their nose or whatever, the person next to them yells at them, they go back and forth, flight attendants get involved. Certainly people can get upset about different things on a plane just because there's stresses from traveling, right? This
Yeah.
existed long before the pandemic, but obviously the masks are an aggravating factor in this.
I'm trying to remember, in all of the flights you've done since in the mask era, have you had unruly passenger incidents or non-compliant people or stuff like that?
Not really. I mean, a few people who were instructed a few times to wear their masks properly,
Yeah.
but nothing too crazy. I almost want to see that happen because it would be entertaining, but that could also backfire because maybe we'd have to do an emergency landing somewhere or get the flight delayed. So maybe I would just be asking for it.
I've had everything you can imagine. I mean, no physical altercations, but people who just took their mask off when the plane took off and then just walked around back and forth to the bathroom with no mask. And very late in the flight, they were told you got to wear a mask, and then they would cover their face with a napkin. I mean, just absurd. People playing coy with the glass. I had one situation, not directly related to COVID, but when I was flying back this was when I went to Spain and I connected in Frankfurt. On my Frankfurt flight coming back, I boarded the plane with my girlfriend and put our bags up right above our seats, as any normal person would do. And then more people boarded. And then eventually a couple boarded and they wanted to put their bags above their seats. We were separated by the aisle and there was no room there because other people had boarded. Now,
That's how it goes.
It's how it goes. There was plenty of room above the seat right behind them, but they wanted their bags right above their seat. And he just starts moving my bag. And I stand up and I say, "Excuse me, that's my bag. Is there an issue?" And the guy says, "Well, I'm trying to put my bag here." And I say, "Oh, the overheads aren't assigned to specific seats. There's room there and there's room there. You could take one step back or one step forward." And the guy said, "Well, you don't have the right." And I was like, "The right to what, sir? I don't have the right to what?" And I said, "Did you want me to move my bag? Where do you want me to tell me where to put my bag and I'll move it." And then his wife talked him out and he just was grumpy. And it's like, dude, this is the way it works. You use the space that's available and then you got to look for space. That's it.
Yeah, that just seems like such an unnecessary confrontation.
Completely.
I'm glad it didn't escalate. And I'm glad that, presumably that guy didn't have too much alcohol in him, although I guess I can't say for sure.
I don't think he did.
There's also the question about whether you actually are salty over the fact that they're bringing alcohol back to some of these airlines just because you're not allowed to drink alcohol on planes because of your vasovagal incident that you had once.
Yeah, I don't drink on planes anymore after I had a glass of wine and then fainted once. I was also highly dehydrated. I would probably be fine, but just to be safe, I'm not drinking on planes. No, that's really not part of it. I'm annoyed because other people get annoying when they drink on planes. It's really that simple.
I just thought you were jealous.
No.
If you can't drink on a plane, then no one should be able to.
Not at all. Not at all. That's not a factor whatsoever. So there it is. Alcohol slowly coming back. I am reading more and more about states dropping mask guidelines. We talked about New Jersey yesterday. California is going to be doing it. But this is like in schools and indoor places. I think that the plane masking is going to be with us for quite some time.
The plane masking?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I understand. I was thinking PLAIN.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, probably planes and trains and automobiles that aren't yours.
Yeah.
They'll continue the masking rules.
You think through the end of the year at least?
That's a good guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like even when they lifted the mask requirements over the summer after a good portion of the population got vaccinated and cases were really low,
Yeah.
we still kept some mask requirements
True.
and, transportation was one of them. So I would say the end of the year. That sounds like a good timeline.
I think at minimum it's going to stick around until then. And you know what? It's fine. I mean, on overnight flights, I think for trying to sleep, it is better not to wear a mask, but I'm fine with it. And when I fly, I'm agreeing to that as a term. So I'm not going to buy a ticket and click, I understand, I got to wear a mask, and then not wear it. If these are the rules, I'm going to follow the rules. Otherwise, I won't fly. That's my perspective. All right, that's it for today. See everybody tomorrow.